verse 1 last week, and so we're going to try to make it to verse 2 this week. And no, we're going to read from verse 2 down through verse 5. And I know we won't get any further than this tonight, but we'll see how far we go. The Bible says, the rich and poor meet together. The Lord is the maker of them all. Prudent man foreseeth the evil and hideth himself, but the simple pass on and are punished. By humility and the fear of the Lord are riches and honor and life. Thorns and snares are in the way of the froward. He that doth keep his soul shall be far from them. Much to unpack in these verses. And so we're going to try to do this in this way. The first I want you to see is the principle from verse 2 that the rich and poor meet together. And what that means scripturally, what that would imply is this. There are a lot of people who kind of look across at other people and go, man, you don't know me. You don't understand what it's like to be me. But here's one thing. It doesn't matter where you're from or who you are. Here is one thing that we will all meet together in. And scripturally, this is true, and that is death. The rich and poor meet together. What do you mean? You both die. You both die. Come with me to Luke 16. Luke chapter 16. I just want to show you this. You say, oh, I understand that. Let's take the time to grasp the principle here. Luke 16, it may be a refresher for you, but I think it is important, especially when we consider it in the context of our chapter. So Luke 16, look at verse 19. There was a certain rich man. So the rich and poor meet together, right? Look at it. There was a certain rich man, which was clothed in purple and fine linen, and fared sumptuously every day. And there was a certain beggar named Lazarus, which was laid at his gate, full of sores, and desiring to be fed with the crumbs which fell from the rich man's table. Moreover, the dogs came and licked his sores. And it came to pass that the beggar died, was carried by the angels into Abraham's bosom. The rich man also died and was buried. And in hell he lift up his eyes, being in torments, and seeth Abraham afar off, and Lazarus in his bosom. For years now, Lazarus was laying outside the rich man's gate, and he never saw him. But in death, you understand, he looked up and saw him in a different way. Somebody he would just glance over, just disregard, is now somebody that when he's in hell and they are both in death, all of a sudden he saw him in a different way. And don't forget, very important, though it's not the message, this is Old Testament, that both the saint and the sinner went to the heart of the earth. All right, so there's a great gulf fixed, and that's all within the chapter. There's a great gulf fixed between those that were the saints and those, if you just wanted to call them the sinners, they're in the heart of the earth. And so it's two chambers there. And so they all met together. You say, where is that? Is it that they all meet together in hell? No. It's they all meet together in death. They all meet together in death. Come back to Ecclesiastes chapter 3. Ecclesiastes 3, and the Bible reiterates this a bunch. Ecclesiastes 3. Verse 18, I said in mine heart concerning the estate of the sons of men, that God might manifest them, that they might see that they themselves are beasts. For that which befalleth the sons of men befalleth beasts. Even one thing befalleth them, as the one dieth, so dieth the other. Yea, they have all one breath, so that a man hath no preeminence above a beast, for all is vanity. All go unto one place, all are of the dust, and all turn to dust again. Who knoweth the spirit of man that goeth upward, the spirit of the beast that goeth downward to the earth? Wherefore I perceive that there's nothing better than that a man should rejoice in his own works, for that is his portion. Or who shall bring him to see what shall be after him? Here in Ecclesiastes, Solomon has just considered and is going to consider that not just man in its great difference, the rich and the poor, but here he lumps all of man together and says, you know what? Man and beasts all go to one place. You understand that? You say, what is that? You all die. And here's what he said, verse 20, all go into one place, all are of the dust, and all turn to dust again. And I tell you that what you'll find is that mankind, it doesn't matter how rich you are, no matter how poor you are, you'll return to dust. Go to Job chapter 34, please. Job 34. It is very interesting that I'm getting ahead of myself, but the next thing where man meets isn't just in death, the rich and poor. The other place that the rich and poor meet is in judgment. And in Ecclesiastes, he deals with, in verse 17, the righteous and the wicked will be judged in their judgment. And so look, if you would please, Job 34, look at verse 15. All flesh shall perish together, and man shall turn again unto dust. Now, that may seem like a trivial thing. Do you understand? It's been repeated now multiple times. And we're not even going to look at all of them. But it is a constant reminded thing in the scriptures that you will turn to dust just like your neighbor and your enemy. You ever thought you were better than somebody? Well, which dust was better? Right? In 100 years from now, when your bones are but dust and theirs are but dust, you know, who was? Well, I was stronger. You understand you cannot look at a skeleton and decide who was stronger? Who was prettier? Oh, that was the prettiest woman alive. Based upon, well, clearly, look at her high cheekbones. Okay. Look at verse 16. If now thou hast understanding, hear this. Hearken to the voice of my words. Shall even he that hateth right govern? Wilt thou condemn him that is most just? Is it fit to say to a king, thou art wicked, and to princes ye are ungodly? How much less to him that accepteth not the persons of princes, nor regardeth the rich more than the poor, for they are all the work of his hands. The rich and poor meet together, for the Lord is the maker of them all, right? Notice verse 20, in a moment shall they die. And the people shall be troubled at midnight and pass away, and the mighty shall be taken away without hand. For his eyes are upon the ways of man, and he seeth all his goings. There is no darkness nor shadow of death, where the workers of iniquity may hide themselves. For he will not lay upon man more that is more than right, that he should enter into judgment with God. That's quite a verse, verse 23. That's why I wanted to get there. He will not lay upon man more than right. What a promise of God. Do you understand? He will not lay upon man more than is right. That's quite a thing. You ever felt like you were unjustly laid upon? He'll not lay upon man more than right. But even here, it's dealing with the rich and the poor, and it says, in a moment they shall die. Go to one more place here, Psalm 49. Psalm 49, please. Isn't it interesting that the rich and the poor look at certain things different ways? Isn't it interesting that there are different views of things? For instance, people with money, people without money, sometimes look at laws differently. You know what's amazing? The rich look at laws like, oh, they don't apply to me. I can pay a good lawyer. He'll get me out of anything. The poor feels like, the rich get away with everything, so I can just do whatever I want. And isn't it interesting that they both break the law with different reasonings, but accomplish the same thing? So the poor is like, oh, those rich people, always breaking the law. So we're going to break the law. Or how about this? Yeah, but I'm poor, so, you understand. What, that you stole? We don't like it when the rich people steal legally, but we'll go against the system and steal. But we get upset when the other... But you know what you can't do? You know what you can't do? You people that are poor, you understand, you can look at it and say, man, it costs too much money to be healthy. Costs too much money for this, Good health care is just so expensive in this country. Aren't they blasting that on the news? Right? Whether it's true or not, that's what they're telling you. It's just so expensive, and so the poor can't get any good health care. But you can't buy your way into everlasting life. You can't buy your way into living beyond your days. You understand, there's not been a single wealthy person in the history of the world that's been able to push off their death. The Elon Musks of the world, Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, they don't even scratch the surface of what Solomon had. You know what he was upset about? We all got to die. That was what Ecclesiastes 3 was all about. He's like, man, it's just like a beast. And they don't even have all this wisdom and wealth that I've got. And yet they die, we die the same way. What's the difference? That's what he's mad about in Ecclesiastes 3. It doesn't matter if you are a king of, Spain, and send someone to the other side of the world looking for a fountain of youth. America, right? You understand what some of that was about? They're hoping for longevity. You know what they couldn't do? They couldn't get away from that the rich and poor meet together in death. They all die. Why? Because we're dust. Look at Psalm 49, look at verse 10. For he seeth that wise men die, likewise the fool and the brutish person perish and leave their wealth to others. Isn't it interesting? It doesn't matter if you're righteous or wicked. Here, it doesn't matter if you're wise or a fool. You all die. Verse 11, their inward thought is that their houses shall continue forever and their dwelling places to all generations. They call their lands after their own names. Johnstown, Williamsburg. Nevertheless, man being in honor abideth not. He's like the beasts that perish. This their way is their folly, yet their posterity approve their sayings. Boy, it's foolishness, but we love it that way, don't we? What do? We'll go to the ribbon cuttings of the new wing at the hospital that's, William and this hospital wing. You say, who is it? Exactly. But it makes us feel good, and we like it. Like sheep, verse 14, they're laid in the grave. Death shall feed on them, and the upright shall have dominion over them. I like this, in the morning. Their beauty shall consume in the grave from their dwelling, but God will redeem my soul from the power of the grave, for he shall receive me. What a thing. Be not thou afraid when one is made rich, and the glory of his house is increased. For when he dieth, he shall carry nothing away. His glory shall not descend after him. You realize there's no rich line in the afterlife? Oh, you guys were rich and accomplish some things in life, you get a separate section over here of eternity. No, that's not how it works. Verse 18, though while he lived, he blessed his soul, and men will praise thee when thou doest well to thyself. He shall go to the generation of his fathers, they shall never see light. Man that is in honor and understandeth not is like the beasts that perish. Please get this. We get old, we start trying to fight the inevitable. And there's a saying in basketball that Father Time is undefeated. All sports. All that means is this: you can't get away from getting old. At some point, you don't jump as high as you did when you were younger. You can't run quite as fast as you did when you were younger. It might take you a little longer to do certain tasks. You been there? You know what? We get the idea that somehow, boy, I can't believe this is happening to me. But the proverb is this: what'd you think was coming? The proverb was this. Now I'm going to show this to you. You can come back to Proverbs 22, because I do want to show you one more thing about this, and then we'll get to verse 3. And where this is all we're going to go to today. So we're good. Notice verse 2 and 3. The rich and poor meet together. The Lord's the maker of them all. A prudent man foreseeth the evil and hideth himself, but the simple pass on and are punished. Now, if there is a punishment coming, can I say to you that what that means is that not only do we meet together in death, but we also meet together in judgment. We meet together in judgment. Let me just show it to you in the New Testament. Come to Hebrews chapter 9. This is a verse you're very familiar with. Hebrews 9, we'll look at verse 27 together. And as it is appointed unto men once to die. Can any get out of it? Answer me. Can any escape it? The rich and poor meet together. We all go down to the grave, right? We can't get away from it. But watch. As it is appointed unto men once to die, but after this, the judgment. Can I tell you that just as certain as death is, judgment is. Just as sure that there is a day where we will die if the Lord tarries his coming, you can be doubly sure that there is a judgment. Rich and poor, righteous and wicked, all men, as it is appointed unto men once to die, but after this the judgment. Can I tell you, you and I will be judged. Every single person. Come to 2 Corinthians chapter 5. 2 Corinthians 5. We live in a society and a culture that does more to try to prevent death than prepare for it. Let me say that again, because you got to get a hold of it. Our culture does not prepare for death. We seek to prevent it. There's a famous astrophysicist. I'm not even going to tell you his name, but he's very famous. He's basically like the reading rainbow guy of our day. In fact, he gets on with him all the time, and they talk. And he's very famous. You'd know him if I said who he was. But he's made this statement multiple times, He's made this statement on the record. He said, the person that's going to live forever is already alive. His thought process is that in the time he gets to be, let's say, 60, we will have come up with a way to genetically modify the genomes to live to 100 or 200. By the time he lives to 100, we'll have figured it out to 500. By the time he gets to 200 or 300, we'll have 1,000 years. And by the time he gets, and so the person who's going to live forever is already alive. And you know what? That's what we're seeking for as a society. How do you prevent death? You can't. You won't prevent death. Why? For the wages of sin is death. Sin, when it is finished, bringeth forth death. Wherefore, as by one man sin entered into the world, and death by sin, you cannot escape death. And we do not spend much time preparing for it. Now, as we get older, you would think, as a society, that we would encourage preparation for death. Don't we encourage preparation for birth? But we don't prepare much for death. But what is intriguing to me is that just as certain as death is, judgment is. And here's what we do. We seek to prevent judgment instead of prepare for it. You're not going to escape it. You're not going to get out of judgment. You will be judged. Now, please watch. Just like in Luke 16, we're going to call them the saints and the sinners, just to keep it simple. They had a different location in the heart of the earth. And in eternity, we understand heaven for the believer, the saint, hell for the lost, the lake of fire. We understand there's a difference there. Get this, there's a different judgment for the saint and the sinner. Okay, so we understand that. You say, I don't know what the difference is. We've looked at those judgments and you need to rightly divide. It's not just the same judgment. It's not just the same eternity. But do you understand that even though we don't have to go to hell, doesn't mean we skip out on death. Just because we don't have to, stand before the great white throne judgment, doesn't mean we skip out on judgment. And there are a lot of people that think because Jesus Christ paid the price of our sin on Calvary, that we are no longer going to be judged. You can't find that in Scripture. Now, we won't be judged for our sin. He paid that price. Look at 2 Corinthians 5. Look at verse 10. By the way, 2 Corinthians is written to who? All right, let's just look at it. Look at chapter 1, verse 1. Just so we're clear who he's writing to. Look at verse 1. Paul, an apostle of Jesus Christ, by the will of God, Timothy our brother, unto the church of God, which is at Corinth, with all the saints which are in Achaia. Okay, so he's writing to the church at Corinth with all the saints. Okay, now look at chapter 5, verse 10. Well, we'll back up to verse 8. We are confident, I say, and willing rather to be absent from the body and to be present with the Lord. There's death. And Paul's willing rather. He'd much rather go that route. He said, wherefore we labor that whether present or absent, we may be accepted of him. For we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, that everyone may receive the things done in his body according to that he hath done, whether it be good or bad. Knowing therefore the terror of the Lord, we persuade men. We are made manifest unto God, and I trust also are made manifest in your consciences. Now we'll stop there. Can I tell you that Paul knew and expected judgment? Judgment was coming. We must all stand before the judgment seat of Christ. And here's the basis, that everyone may receive the things done in his body, according to that he hath done, whether it be good or bad. One more place here in 1 Peter chapter 4. 1 Peter chapter 4. By the way, in Romans 14, here's how he worded this. For we shall all stand before the judgment seat of Christ. Here we are, 1 Peter 4. Look at verse 17. For the time has come that judgment must begin at the house of God. And if it first begin at us, what shall the end be of them that obey not the gospel of God? And if the righteous scarcely be saved, where shall the ungodly and the sinner appear? Wherefore let them that suffer according to the will of God commit the keeping of their soul to him that in well-doing as unto a faithful Creator. He's the maker of them all, is he not? And he'll not put on man more than is just. Look, and I tell you, if verse 7 or 18 ought to scare you, what do you mean? And if the righteous scarcely be saved. Are you making any preparation for the judgment? If you think you're going to pass the test without studying, you got another thing coming. It'd be like going to take your bar exam to become a lawyer without studying. Oh, I'm sure I'll get a couple right. Maybe I'll do well. You would fail miserably. I don't care how many episodes of your favorite law, show you watched. You'd fail miserably. Probably worse so if you YouTubed it. Imagine walking in and taking whatever the final exam is to become a doctor. I didn't even know what was going to be on the test. Do you know what judgment is coming? Have you made any preparation for what is inevitable? Now, come back, if you would, please, to Proverbs 22. Let me show you this. Proverbs 22. I'm going to end on a positive note for you. Proverbs 22. The rich and poor, verse 2, meet together. The Lord is the maker of them all. They meet in death, but they also meet in judgment. Verse 3, a prudent man foreseeth the evil. Wait a minute now. Something is coming that's not going to go well. And so he does something about it and hideth himself. But the simple pass on and are punished. Now, we're going to give some real practical side of this in a different day. But the principle of the rich and poor meeting together in death and judgment is the context of the verse. And he's dealing with the reality that we will die and we will be judged. And if you don't do anything about that and you think you're going to come out okay, you've got another thing coming. Haven't you made preparations for when you die? What do you mean? Well, you looked ahead and said, this isn't the only life we have to live. And so you've put your faith and trust in Jesus Christ. You've prepared for death. Are you preparing for judgment? Many Christians prepare for death, but not judgment. Many Christians have eternal life insurance. Jesus Christ, salvation. We've got that prepared for. We're not worried about death. In fact, haven't you ever met somebody like that? I'm saved. I'm not afraid to die. But have you prepared for the judgment? Because if you haven't prepared for the judgment, Paul said, you should be afraid. If you're not laboring for the Lord, you don't realize what's coming. That's what he said in 2 Corinthians 5. That's why he said he labored for him. We might be accepted of him. Is that not what he said? Why? Judgment's coming. And just as much. In fact, what I'd submit to you is even more so than preparation for death, you ought to be preparing for judgment. Because, and here's the thing, you did nothing. You had no part in your placement into life. You understand, God's the giver of life, and He produced your life with mom and dad. You had nothing to do with it. But you there has everything to do with you here. Because there is verse 3, there's punishment. The prudent man foreseeth the evil and hideth himself, but the simple pass on and are punished. Or, verse 4, by humility and the fear of the Lord are riches and honor and life. So there can be punishment or reward. Now let me show you that this verse is connected because verse 5 ends this way. So thorns and snares are in the way of the forward, but he that doth keep his soul shall be far from them. Do you understand? He foreseeth the evil, hideth himself. What do you mean? He keeps himself from those things that are going to produce the problematic end, the punishment that he's trying to avoid. So he stays away from them. The snares and the thorns, we'll get into that. But by humility and the fear of the Lord are riches and honor and life. Now, you're going to face the judgment seat of Christ. What are you doing to prepare for it? What are you doing to prepare for it? You know what's amazing that the Bible says about David? It says that he prepared abundantly before his death. That's what it says he did. Now we understand he's dealing with the temple. The temple. But isn't it interesting how it's David's throne that Jesus is sitting on in the kingdom? David's coming back to rule over Israel, according to Ezekiel. Isn't it interesting that all that preparation produced riches and honor and life? So let me ask you, what are you preparing for in your judgment? All right, let me show you this. Come back to Luke 16. Luke 16. Remember the rich man and Lazarus, the beggar? Verse 22. It came to pass that the beggar died, was carried by the angels into Abraham's bosom. The rich man also died and was buried. So we've met together. You say, where have we met together? Buried. They're both in the dust. Unto dust thou shalt return. You understand, it doesn't matter how gold your coffin is, it's put into the dust. All right, watch verse 23. And in hell he lift up his eyes, being in torments, seeth Abraham afar off, Lazarus in his bosom. And he cried and said, Father Abraham, have mercy on me. Send Lazarus, that he may dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, for I am tormented in this flame. Well, isn't it interesting? He never sent for Lazarus from the gate to the house. But he's sending for Lazarus from Abraham's bosom to hell. But notice Abraham's response, verse 25. Abraham said, Son, remember that thou, in thy lifetime, receivest thy good things, And likewise, Lazarus evil things, but now he is comforted, and thou art tormented. Can I tell you, their lives produced their reward or their punishment. All right, Matthew 16. Matthew 16. We're going to pick up a couple of other places, but pretty much we're going back to these same things. Matthew 16, look at verse 27. For the Son of Man shall come in the glory of his Father with his angels, and then he shall reward every man according to his works. Then. Can I tell you? You can't make an accurate determination of what someone has here. Well, they're rich and I'm poor. You sure about that? You sure about that? How about this one? Which one's more? Let's just say, watch now. Let's say you've got $1 million. You have $1 million that you hold on to for 20 years down here. $1 million. $1 million times 20 years. We're just going to call that $20 million. Okay? You hold on to $1 million 20 years' time. What about $1 for eternity? Doesn't that trump 20 million? Okay, you go, I don't know. All right, how about this? $1, 100 million years. So $20 million here, $1 million for 20 years, or $1 for 1 million years, or 100 million years. Do you understand how quickly that thing switches? Now factor in eternity. You sure they've got more than you? Where's your preparation? Okay, so lay not up for yourselves treasures. Where? On earth, where moth and rust doth corrupt, but lay up for yourselves treasure in heaven. So you making any preparation? At all? Do we not spend an entire career preparing for preventing death? What do you mean? They call it 401k. They call it all kinds of things. Retirement. You can. What are we doing? We're investing throughout our whole life for the period of preventing death. Instead of preparing for death, and furthermore preparing for judgment, which is truly setting the stage for life. Say, oh, you don't think we should prepare for retirement? That is not what I said. Not at all. All right, so come back to Job 34. Job 34. We got to hurry. Job 34. Good thing we didn't get to verse 5, huh? Job 34. Remember, this is where we read from. Same chapter. I mean, we read from verse 15 down through the end, verse 23. I'm at the end of my page, not the end of the chapter. Verse 23. But notice verse 11. It's talking about God. And I like it. Verse 10 is just too good not to read. Therefore hearken unto me, ye men of understanding. Far be it from God that he should do wickedness, and from the Almighty that he should commit iniquity. What a verse. Amen. All right, verse 11. For the work of a man shall he render unto him, and cause every man to find according to his ways. Do you understand? God's going to render to every man. Say, I've never been treated right. You will. You will. Mark it down. You will receive a righteous judgment. I'm talking about a perfect judgment. And far be it from God to do wickedness. even if that means on your behalf. What do you mean? It's going to be righteous. And so if the balance sheet shows 0, he's not going to make it up because he likes you. Well, I just don't think I need to serve God. Don't. He's not going to force you to. But when you stand before him and have nothing, don't be mad at him. It'll be a righteous judgment. All right, Proverbs 24. Proverbs 24. Proverbs 24, verse 12. So shall the knowledge of wisdom be unto my soul. That's verse 14. Let's go back to verse 12. If thou sayest, behold, we knew it not, doth not he that pondereth the heart consider it? Pull back up to verse 11 so you can get context. If thou forbear to deliver them that are drawn unto death, and those that be ready to slain. If thou say, behold, we knew it not, doth not he that pondereth the heart consider it? He that keepeth thy soul, doth not he know it? And shall not he render to every man according to his works? Do you understand? You're going to receive for what you've done. Now that'll either scare you or excite you. Okay, 2 Corinthians 5. 2 Corinthians 5, we're going to do 3 New Testament references and pray. 2 Corinthians 5. Here's where we were. Verse 10. For we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, that every one may receive the things done in his body, according to that he hath done, whether it be good or bad. You're going to receive for the things done in his body, your body. According to that he hath done, whether it be good or bad. Ephesians chapter 6. Ephesians chapter 6. So a prudent man foreseeth the evil, and hideth himself. The simple pass on and are punished. You say, well, there's a judgment seat coming and I've not done anything. So go ahead and live the rest of your life not doing anything either. I mean, what's the difference, right? Nonsense. Pay attention that there's a judgment seat coming and do something about it. The blessing is you're still here. You still have time. Ephesians 6, look at verse 8. This verse, it's amazing to me. Verse 7 says, with goodwill doing service as to the Lord and not to men. There's a key there. Verse 8, knowing that whatsoever good thing any man doeth, the same shall he receive of the Lord, whether he be bond or free. Whatsoever good thing any man doeth, the same shall he receive of the Lord, whether he be bond or free. Do you understand? It doesn't matter what your status is, rich or poor, master or servant. It doesn't matter what the status is. There is a judgment coming, and therefore you ought to do goodwill, doing service, as to the Lord, not to men. Wake up. It isn't just this life. There's more to it. Last place, Revelation 22. What better place than the very end? Here we are. You know we're done. Because it's not like me to go from Revelation to the book of Genesis, is it? Oh man, we started over. Revelation 22. Look at verse 12. You understand this is one of the last things the Lord gives us in His Word? I mean, this is one of the very last things. Here it is, verse 12. And behold, I come quickly, and my reward is with me, to give every man according as his work shall be. Are you trying to prevent it? You can't. But are you preparing for it? He is abundantly clear. It's coming. Doesn't matter who you are. You can't avoid it. So what are we doing to prepare for it? Now here's the amazing thing. Over and over again, his heart is, and this is what he said, to reward, to give good. That's his heart. But every man will receive, good or bad, according to what you've done. And here's the blessing, 1 Corinthians 3, you know the verse. We're not turning there. We're done. Every work shall be made manifest, but he himself shall be saved, yet so as by fire. Aren't you glad there's protection? But the prudent man foreseeth the evil. Ooh, there's coming a bad day for me. How many of you look ahead to the judgment seat and go, ooh, there's some things aren't going to be so great about that day for me? If the righteous scarcely be saved. Yes, probably not going to go right. All right, so look ahead and do something about it. The good news is there's still time. Folks, there's still time. You say, oh, you're telling us to get our affairs in order? I'm telling you, get that in order. But I'm also telling you that we ought to look at it and say, you know what? Death and judgment are coming. I shouldn't seek to prevent it. I'm not saying being foolish about life. Don't misunderstand me. But we ought to spend more time preparing for death than preventing it. I'm not saying don't go to the hospital if you're sick. That's not what I mean at all. What I'm saying is don't pretend like it's not going to happen. It's inevitable. You know what's going to happen if the Lord tarries is coming? One day, our great-grandchildren are going to die. If the Lord tarries is coming, 100 generations will pass. I don't know about that. 100 generations pass that way. You said, oh, you think the Lord's not coming back? No, I'd be surprised if we didn't go out the upper way, not the underway. But what I am saying to you is we ought to be preparing. Because the rich and poor meet together. The Lord is maker of them all. And the prudent man foreseeth the evil and hideth himself. But the simple pass on and are punished. By humility and the fear of the Lord are riches and honor and life. Well, you want a reward? He's bringing his reward with him. Imagine buying a whole car, a truck bed full of gifts to bring to your kids, only to have them refuse the good that you would to them. And so you have to take the gifts out of the car and leave them in the house and go to Christmas. And you show up at the kids' house. You're there. And you wanted to bring your reward with you. There's no reward for them. Wouldn't you be disappointed? Man, all the good things I got for you. Man, all the fun you'd be having with this. I put thought and care into this reward for you, and I wanted you to have it, but you refused it. I mean it, Dad. No gifts. Okay. Missing out. I don't want to miss out. And more importantly, I don't want you to miss out on what God has for you at the judgment seat. Stand to our feet.